Oh, God. I just don't know what that could be. What is that noise?
Uh-oh.
Did that shut it off?
Yeah. Oh, Evelyn, I think you're on mute.
That's me, I think. What the? Okay. Oh, I don't know what's happening with my mic. I'm so sorry. What the heck?
Can you hear me now?
So is this?
Okay.
What is that?
Well,
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second series of Readings from the Room. My name is Evelyn Krieger. I'm a board member of the Writers' Room and your host for tonight's program. In just a moment, you'll hear readings from two wonderful authors, Aube Rey Lescure and Melissa Mohr. You'll have a chance to ask them questions and hear about their writing process. But before we begin, a few words about the Writers' Room. The Writers' Room of Boston is an urban writers' retreat. We are committed to providing a creative workspace for emerging and established writers. Our fellowship program grants 4 juried writers of limited means full access to the workspace for 1 year. We are a nonprofit organization governed by membership dues and contributions from both public and private sources. We're especially grateful to the Massachusetts Cultural Council and the Boston Cultural Council for their continued financial support. And tonight's program is free, but please consider clicking on our donate button. And now I present to you the first of our guest authors, Aube Rey Lescure. Aube is a French-Chinese-American writer. She is the co-author of Creating a Stable Asia and the translator of a French essay anthology. Aube's fiction and creative nonfiction have appeared in the Jellyfish Review, Entropy Magazine, Medium, and World Nomads. Aube was a 2019 Ivan Gold Fellow at the Writers' Room of Boston, a Pauline Shear Fellow at Greb Street's Novel Incubator Program, and a 2021 Writer-in-Residence at the Studio of Keys West. She currently works as a deputy editor of Off Assignment. Welcome, Aube.
Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you everyone for coming to this reading. So I will be reading from the very start of my novel in progress. It's called The Foreigner, and it is set entirely in China. So here we go. Chapter 1. A man called Lu Fang stole Alva's mother in Grand Ballroom B of Shanghai's Imperial Hotel. Frenetic pop blared from loudspeakers, reverberating in a room too large for the dozen banquet tables arranged along a sparse, invisible grid. The carpeting was musty, and Alva knew none of the guests. There were businessmen with plus ones, some so conspicuously young you had to think they were little honeys and not wives. Their brown ringlet perms tufted around their heads like wigs of British lords. With the plus ones came a glinty display of Chanel and Louis Vuitton bags, slung over chairs negligently, but not negligently enough to hide the logos. Garlicky steam rose from plates of food waiting at each table, seeping into expensive hairdos and suit jackets, but no longer noticeable after 10 minutes, then 15. Or maybe Alva was just neuro-adapting. Breathe any air for long enough and you stop noticing the strangeness of it. The strangeness of an 80,888 yuan luncheon wedding package in this unventilated, windowless function room. The strangeness of the bride failing to make her entrance as the meal grows cold. Whispers started to spread. A man at the next table stealthily shoved a pork cube into his mouth. Alva had been in the upstairs hotel room moments earlier, watching the beautician smear last touches of highlighter along her mother's cheekbones. Sloane was ready. She told Alva she just needed a moment alone. Alva knew Sloane would eventually come. Still, she wished for a burst dress seam, a stuck elevator, a sewage pipe exploding into an uncrossable whole whale lake. Whatever could delay her mother from making her way to the man waiting. Lu Fang, in the three-piece suit, clutched the velvet ring box against his thigh. He stood on stage under an arch of pink balloons. The grease on his nose shone under the spotlight. Alva couldn't understand why, out of all the men Sloane had seen over the years, it was their landlord, Lu Fang, who'd made the cut. He was in his 50s, spoke too loudly, chewed with his mouth open, aggressively gelled his hair, wore suits with cheap satin sheens. He liked quoting poems in his thick Dongbei accent. Alva had noticed these traits with distant condescension when he came in for monthly checkups. He'd been more diligent than owners of moldy one-bedrooms in Puxi she and Sloane used to lease year to year. They'd gotten Lu Fang's apartment for cheap, an anomaly in the middle-class residential neighborhood of Century Park in Shanghai. Alva had thought it was because the compounds were so new they smelled like paints and chemicals, ghost towers waiting to be animated from within, one cell after another. There were times she'd come from school in the past year and found Lu Fang on their couch, taciturn, and Sloane across from him in the big armchair by the banyan plant. Mr. Lu came to look at the air conditioner, she'd say, or the water heater. If Alva had interrupted anything, they'd hidden it well. Sloane always put flowers and fresh fruit on the dining room table for these apartment inspections, and Alva had seen these adornments as attempts to evoke a more put-together lifestyle, so he wouldn't think they lived like slobs. But they did. They spent entire weekends in pajamas, watching pirated seasons of Friends. They boiled water for instant noodles in cardboard cups most dinners, pretending they weren't slobs, that they didn't abhor the very concept of order was going to be a full-time performance. Lu Fang would live with them after the wedding, be in the apartment that was his to begin with. There was movement at the door, and the music abruptly to something orchestral. Sloane was finally here. Age 46 and bride for the first time, she glided along an actual red carpet in a floor-length silk qipao. Her ash blonde hair fell pinstraight down her back. The MC led a rhythmic clap that died down once the bride reached the groom at center stage. Wu Fang gripped the ring box like he was drawing strings from the Cartier gold that would meld the union. Sloane slowly turned to face the crowd. Her eyes scanned the tables methodically, looking for someone. Alva raised her hand and gave her mother a small wave, but Sloane's gaze swept past her, past the rows of business guests, and fell to the back corner of the room. The videographer was standing there, next to his tripod. He made the thumbs up signal. Sloane threw back her blonde mane and gave the crowd her best Hollywood smile. The woman seated across from Alva, a well-fed business wife, leaned towards another guest. The Lawai has a daughter, did you know? Alva kept her face perfectly neutral. The other guest said, she's sitting right there. The business wife lowered her voice. A mixed blood? Does she speak Chinese? Alva focused on staring vacantly at the stage, where Lu Fang and Sloane were striking a series of contrived poses for the photographer. Lu Fang pointed to a distant sight that appeared to be a mold stain on the ceiling. I guess not, the other woman said. Looks nothing like her mother, the business wife declared, her tattoo eyebrows arched. Pity, replied the other. Alva took a gulp from her glass of Wangzai milk drink, which burned with a sting of cheap alcohol she poured in. The vodka itself she'd borrowed from her mother's stash and transferred into a plastic water bottle. She thought about what the drink could be named. It was like a white Russian, only off-brand. A white Chinese, half and half, just like herself. Having entirely disinherited Sloane's physique, Alva had black hair, black eyes, and slightly olive skin. When she was a baby, people thought she was adopted. Growing up, she badly desired a late-onset genetic mutation that would bestow her a little bit of Sloane, but to this day, she really did look nothing like her mother. A round of hungry clapping followed the ring exchange. It was official. Alva calculated how many days were left until she could leave for America, with college as a pretext. Over 1,000. Her one relief in life was that one day she'd go live there, her birthright, though it now probably meant she'd have to leave her mother. Alva used to think Sloane wouldn't stay in China forever, but now she was a proper tai-tai here, anchored by her husband in an apartment. Everybody was scuttling up, raising teacups and porcelain shot glasses. May your hair whiten till your golden age. May your love be deeper than the sea, they cooed. Lu Fang clutched Sloane at the waist, nodding acknowledgments at such and such manager. Sloane sported her usual closed-mouthed smile, which to Alva was indecipherable. A small army of beauty workers had made Sloane a resplendent bride, and that resplendence was now gawked at by a captive audience, captured by two on-duty audiovisual artists. But was it a glamorous occasion to be standing next to this bloated, overwhelmed man? Her mother blinked at the photographer's final flashes, then stepped away from Lu Fang. The MCs green-lighted the dinner's commencement, and so began a merciless assault on the diced black pepper steak and steamed fish. Bottle of Maotai and Great Wool were poured and replenished. The staff struggled to keep up with the oily plates and bone piles to discard from white tablecloth. Lu Fang and Sloane made their way to the VIP table in fits and starts, stopping to greet this manager and that tai-tai until they finally reached their seats, next to Alva. Partner, Sloane exclaimed like it was a surprise to see her. Nice spread, isn't it? The slur in her voice suggested the hotel minibar had played a role in her delayed entrance. Michelin quality, Alva said in English. Watching her mother pour herself some Maotai, she winced. Strong stuff, she said. Exactly, Sloane replied, her smile tight. And that is the end of my reading.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Really enjoyed that. Before we go on to Melissa, I just would love you to tell us a little bit about the inspiration for this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So this work is definitely drawn somewhat from my experience growing up in China, although my mother is here in the audience and I want her to know it's absolutely not 100% autobiographical. But yes, I was lucky enough to grow up in France, but mostly China. And I just always thought that racial relations there in this globalized metropolis were fascinating and something you don't read too much about in the expat writing genre. There's a lot of cheapo detective novels set in Shanghai a lot of the time, but very few works kind of analyzing contemporary social dynamics. So that was kind of my aim, to tell a family story that also addressed some of that.
Thank you. Look forward to reading the rest.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll come back to you with more questions from our audience. And now I'd like to introduce our second reader, Melissa Mohr. Melissa Mohr is an authority on swearing. Yes, she is the author of Holy Shit, A Brief History of Swearing, which appeared on the Guardian bestseller list, has been reviewed by the Sunday Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the book has been translated into Turkish and Korean. Melissa's articles have appeared in the Guardian, the Sunday Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Huffington Post, Salon.com, and Time.com. She's been interviewed on Morning Edition, on NPR, ABC, and the BBC. Melissa writes the In a Word language column for the Christian Science Monitor and is a member of the Writers' Room of Boston. Welcome, Melissa.
I'm on mute. Hello. Hi. Okay. Am I good? Can everybody see me? Yes. Okay. Good. So I am going to read a little bit from my book about swearing because oh, someone says they've used Holy Shit. Excellent. All right, sorry. So I'm going to read a little bit from Holy Shit because yeah, it's fun to get some bad words in there. And then, you know, we can talk about it and talk about Aube's work, and so I'll just read a short thing. So I'm just going to read the thing that the introduction I like best. Okay, so this is about the Middle Ages. So in the year 715, a monk named Eadfrith began a wonderful and ambitious labor of love. In a cold, damp, windswept priory on the coast of northeast England, he poured all his energy and artistic skill into a gift to honor God, producing the Lindisfarne Gospels, one of the most beautiful illuminated manuscripts in the world. This exquisite manuscript contains Vulgate, which is Latin, versions of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, illustrated in the insular fashion, a combination of Celtic and Anglo-Saxon styles. Some 250 years later, a priest of the same community named Eldred added an English gloss to the Latin text, producing the oldest surviving English version of the Gospels. Liber generationis Jesu Christi filii David filii Abraham. Matthew begins in Latin, and Eldred translates in, I can't really read Anglo-Saxon very convincingly, but here it goes. Bok knuris a helenus Christe Davidus sunor Abrahamus sunum. Maybe. This is Old English, almost incomprehensible to modern speakers of the language. And as I just read it, probably incomprehensible to Anglo-Saxon people too. But the line means, as the King James Version puts it, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And so Aldred goes on, glossing the Latin quite literally until he comes to Matthew 5:27, which in the King James Version says, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery." Aldred, however, translates this rather differently, as "Geherder geforden acquaintance to them aldum blah blah blah." You have heard that it was said of them of old, don't sin, and don't sard another man's wife. Much later, during the English Renaissance, sard was seen as only slightly more acceptable than fuck is today. In a 1530 English-French dictionary, for example, sard is designed with foutre, French for fuck. I sard a queen, which is old word for prostitute, and then he conjugates je fous, nous foutons, je foutis, j'ai foutu, you know, all the variations of foutre in this book. I fuck, we fuck, etc. So the question is, what is a word like sard doing in the Bible? In this sacred book, so beautifully crafted for the honor of God, why did the priest translate the Latin as, in essence, thou shalt not fuck thy neighbor's wife? And I'll just, because I love the biblical stuff, I'll just go on a little bit. So there were also many, many more examples of bad words in medieval Bibles. You've got bollocks in the Lollard Bible, which Americans don't use so much, but in England it's quite a bad word, balls. And we have, let's see, the Wycliffe Bible from it's 14th century. Here's a good quote. The Lord will smite you with the boils of Egypt on the part of the body by which turds are shat out. That's Deuteronomy. This is a close translation of the Latin, which accounts for the odd circumlocution that avoids one vulgar word by using two more. It's not that the Wycliffites couldn't bring themselves to use ours. They could. We later find out that the Lord smote the people of Azoth, which is Ashdod, and its coasts in the more private part of their arses. So this is the Bible. You've got swearing, words that we now consider swearing. You've got them everywhere in the Middle Ages, in school books, poetry, names of plants and animals, people's names. And so these words, the point of this chapter is that these words, which we now consider to be some of the, really bad words in English, were not obscene in the Middle Ages. Okay, I think I'm done. I'm looking at myself while I'm talking, and I don't want to look at me anymore.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
That was a very, very fun meeting. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but I'm going to have to ask it tonight. How did you get interested in swearing?
Well, I've always thought that, these words were interesting for their power, that they really are different from other words, and that when you swear at someone, all these other things happen, and it's like, why do we, hear fuck, and, start to sweat, and our hearts start beating faster, and, different things happen in the brain, whereas if you hear intercourse or whatever, nothing happens.
And you found all the answers?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. So I think we'll bring up Aube now and have some questions from the audience. But before we start on the audience questions, I know you two spent time at the Writers' Room of Boston, so I'd love if you could tell our audience today what that experience was like and what the Writers' Room meant to you. Aube, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be a fellow at the Writers' Room of Boston in the year preceding COVID. So I work very much, as a freelance writer and editor without any other regular 9 to 5 office job, which was a huge leap to take as a young person, as a recent college graduate. And you really miss kind of that comfort of walking somewhere with a purpose and being like, this is my birthplace. And the Writers' Room of Boston was very much that. Sometimes I would put on blazers and right into the financial district and then take the elevator up and find my little cubicle and, see the facts in the heads of other writers and feel like there was like ceremony and ritual and solemnity around, going to work at a place where other writers work as well.
That's so great. Thank you. What about you, Melissa?
I think that we should all mute ourselves when one person's talking, Evelyn. I think that's the echo, possibly. Okay. All right. I really echo what Aube said. I think the Writers' Room is a great place to work. For me, when I'm at home, I just do almost anything but write, like I'd rather do the laundry. I'd rather organize my bookshelf, I don't know, anything. And going to the writer's room, it's just this great community. And even if, I mean, it's nice to talk to people too, but even better is when there are all these people in there and they're all working. And then you want to get up and watch Instagram videos, but you're like, but wait, these people around me have been working for more than 15 minutes. I can do this. And so that's a really nice part of it, I think. Yeah.
We'd also be interested in hearing about your writing process. I just really enjoy hearing how different writers approach, whether you're like a morning person, an everyday person, do you have an accountability partner? Go ahead, Aube.
Yeah, so my writing process, shamefully, a lot of it when I'm not in a writer's room maybe happens when I'm in various horizontal positions on my couch or in my bed. But more formally, what I really love to do upon waking up and getting my cup of coffee is just read some beautiful personal essays or book excerpts, or just kind of wake my brain up with the kind of special rhythm or flow or really good writing. And I'm sure some writers here will understand that need that creates in your own brain. You're like, I don't even know what I'm going to write, but I'm not musical at all. So this is strange, but your brain almost gets in this mode of, I want to create something with rhythm, with flow as well. And then that really kind of puts you in a mood to create, and you take that energy. And from there, I'm able to write for maybe a couple hours, but rarely more. And that's the joys of being a writer, I think, is that our productivity stretch is often limited enough that we can spend the rest of our day doing other things.
I love that. Thank you. I also begin my my mornings with reading some poetry. How about you, Melissa? What's your secret?
Oh gosh, my secret is to, yes, try as hard as possible to have someone who makes me keep to a deadline. So I don't actually have an accountability partner, but I find it much easier to write my column, which comes out every week, and I know it's due on Tuesday at this time, and it's, so I can do that. But a book is just, for me, it's just really hard. And also because I write nonfiction, it's just so easy to get into a rabbit hole, and then 2 weeks later you're like, wow, I learned all this stuff about how Romans adopted children, but that's not going to make it into the book. It's very interesting, maybe later. But so yeah, I don't really have a good, I'm still working on my perfect process.
Well, that answer makes me feel better. So we have a question from our audience. Melissa, what are you working on now?
So I'm doing this column about language for the Christian Science Monitor, which is super fun, because every week it's something else, and it's like a short dive into something, and because it's about language, I can write about anything. The only thing about the Christian Science Monitor is they're very not into swearing or sex, which are the two things I write about. So, but it's good, get your mind out of the gutter a little bit, once a week. And I've been working on another book forever, which is a sort of social history of marriage. But yeah, my work is very research intensive, and I usually use a Harvard library. It's been closed; they won't let me in, and I don't know. It's been slow. The writer's room has been closed, but it's now open. So, anyway, that's what I'm working on. Sorry. Oh, how about how's your novel coming?
Well, I'm technically still working on my novel, in the sense that I've reached the dreadful stage of querying and trying to move towards a publishing side of things, which is very stressful and abhorrent. But I think it's also necessary time to, be away from the manuscript, so that after 3 years, I've been working on it for 3 years. If I need to come back to it and revise, which I will, let's be honest, I'll have a fresher perspective. And for any, Boston area writers who are working on novels, I have to say, this past year, I've been part of the Grub Street Novel Incubator Program, which is a year-long program focused very much on novel revision. And that just was one of the most important things I've done as a writer, and really helped me find a community of talented novelists who were in the trenches together. So that was really kind of an invaluable part, along with the Writers' Room of Boston, in making the lonely job of being a writer a little bit less lonely.
Okay, and let's see, we have another question. What do you both read for inspiration?
Do you want to go ahead? Oh, you go first.
Okay, let me think. I read a lot of, as I say, kind of shorter pieces of writing, just so that I can get kind of that burst of inspiration that you don't necessarily get as much when you're really, settled in with a good book. I read a lot of personal essays, as I mentioned, so I'll frequently go on LitHub or the Paris Review or Guernica, kind of online literary magazines that are publishing very fresh literary essays that oftentimes have this personal narrative, creative nonfiction aspect to them. And I think I particularly love those because I myself, when I'm not writing, I work as an editor for a wonderful site called Off Assignment, which is a place for personal essays that focus on writing about place or has a slight travel writing slant. So I think I just find transportive kind of essays and novels the most inspirational for me.
Thank you. I also enjoy essays very much. And Melissa, what about you for inspiration?
Again, because I write nonfiction, I mean, the inspiration tends to be like people, using words in a strange or interesting way, or, my kids coming home and saying something, and I'm like, wait, where does that word come from? Like bougie. I did, maybe a couple of years ago about bougie, and it where that, and got it, you again go down these rabbit holes and watch videos, and so yeah, just anything. And then in terms of, I mean, the inspiration for my book that I keep working on forever was basically being married for, I think I've been married 25 years. Or I've been with my husband 25 years, and that's what the book is about, the kind of relationships around marriage, not sort of a history of marriage, but the history of all the relationships that marriage gets in the way of and changes, like friendship and adultery and all these relationships like that. But so that was my inspiration for that. But I love reading. It's just usually fiction, and so not directly.
So a novel is some marriage, a wedding, and a nonfiction with some marriage. Interesting. So I want to thank you guys so much for your time. And if our audience would like to contact you, please look in the chat. We have their website, and we can get the books on Amazon. And please support our writers and our writers' room, and join us again for our next series. Thank you so much. Bye, Aube. Bye, Melissa. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, wait, can I ask you a question? Sorry, I didn't get a chance. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just wondering what, So you speak so many languages. What language do you have one you prefer to swear in?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I grew up with French and Chinese as my native languages, and English is my third, actually. And you are so right. When a swear word comes to mind, it usually comes from a more primal part of the brain or something. So in Chinese, fuck is cao. So if I go to China for a while, that might be what volunteers itself to my brain. And sorry, Mom, again, but in French, my family lives in the south of France, which has a very accented way of speaking. And if I'm there for a few months and I want to swear, what comes to mind is putain, which is the southern French way of swearing. So hopefully that gives some fodder to perhaps your next book. Well, I don't want to end this on me swearing, so thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much.